I'm going to be honest. Definitely didn't see Tuesday coming. It wasn't like it was an offensive show, but for the second straight game, Michigan goes and beats a team it essentially has no business beating. After being 19.5-point underdogs to Ohio State and winning that game, Michigan's 16.5-point underdogs to Alabama. We predicted a loss. Couldn't be so happy to be more wrong. We'll talk about the game in the ReliaQuest Bowl on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy New Year's Day. Happy New Year. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. We missed some with the travel and the bowl schedule and all of that, but I am your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. I am back in Michigan after a late flight last night. I am exhausted, but we are bringing the show to you. I'm cold as well. As you're watching, that's why I'm wearing my little puffer vest, even with the heat on in my house, because it is very Michigan outside compared to being out in the elements, being out in the muggy 80-degree game, which I enjoyed every second of. And Michigan gets the 19-13 win over Alabama, bolstered by the early start by the defense. What was shocking to me was to see just how unbelievable the defense was, getting 3 turnovers in 4 plays. Really incredible stuff. Mixture of guys like, Rayshaun Benny was an absolute terror in this game. I asked him after, I said, this isn't in a press conference scenario, but I asked him, I said, were you surprised? And he's like, there was a mixture of like, nah, we knew we could do this, but it was also kind of like, but yeah, like we knew we had a really good shot, but like we didn't think we were going to dominate the way that we did. I mean, the Michigan defensive front, even without Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, I mean, they're on the sidelines for the game. They looked like they got shot out of a cannon against Alabama, against all these vaunted Alabama players. I mean, you just kind of look up and down the list. There are just so many players that got so heavily involved in what they were able to do, because you have the defensive tackles. Benny only had one tackle in the entire game, but yet, like, you could see his influence throughout the entire game, right? Like, you could see him just going out there and making a big impact. You just saw multiple players get involved. Obviously, Derrick Moore with the 2 sacks. TJ Guy only had 3 tackles. He had a couple really good plays in this game. Cameron Brandt obviously had the recovery. He had a sack. Brandon Hillman had the sack. Wesley Walker had the interception. Amir Hall was an absolute monster out there. So we're getting outside of the front a little bit, but just looking at the numbers, I mean, absolutely incredible effort. Alabama had to get to some tricky type of plays in order to be able to do much of anything offensively. Whether it was, I mean, it wasn't tricky, but having I think it was Jam Miller having the lead block on that big Milrow run. And then obviously the reverse, and just being just slightly behind the play allowed for the few Alabama big plays. But otherwise, I mean, they couldn't really run the ball. They were running into a brick wall similar to Michigan in a lot of these moments. And it just absolutely dominant on that side of the ball. It really, really incredible stuff getting to witness Michigan getting a win like this. This is a different scenario now, because I said this on SiriusXM this morning, because they asked, is this a successful season? And I said, absolutely. And now I'll expand on that a little bit, because obviously it's successful when you beat Ohio State, and they beat Michigan State as well, right? That was a Michigan State team that's not very good, but certainly was capable of beating this Michigan team at the time that they played. Now I'm not so sure, but they were able to do so. What makes it incredible, this season incredible, is that you had two ranked wins in which you were double-digit underdogs. You are not accustomed to seeing Michigan doing that. You are usually accustomed to seeing Michigan being on the other end of that. right? Going back to, I hate to say it, but 2007, right? Like you were more accustomed to seeing Michigan, and I think it even started in that Rose Bowl against USC. I don't know what the spread was, but Michigan was heavy favorites. I remember going into that game and then ended up laying an egg, right? I understand that Michigan team thought it was going to be playing in a national championship game, and the Rose Bowl was a consolation prize it wasn't willing to partake in. But at the same time, it's really incredible to see a Michigan team that is so offensively challenged able to go and have these two types of wins back to back. The bookends of Alabama, January 1 to December 31, a team that up until the game, everyone was saying maybe they should have been in the college football playoff, and Michigan goes and takes it to them. Obviously having to withstand their run, but 16-0 becomes, was it 16-10 and then 19-10 and then 19-13. Alabama with a chance to win it in the end. The Michigan defense stands strong. I mean, it's storybook, man. It's absolutely storybook. The fact that they were able to win a game like this, right? Like that just shows, and this is my thought. So many people look at some of these games over the last several years, and they call them fluky one way or the other, right? They and I'm not talking about the Michigan media. I'm talking about the national media, because they would look at any of the Ohio State games except for 2023 and say, well, Ohio State probably wins that game 9 times out of 10. Michigan just found the one. But when you have the win over Ohio State like this year, when you have the other wins over Ohio State, when you have this particular win over Alabama, that tells you it is not fluky. This is a pattern. This is who Michigan is. And if Michigan can find a way to get some offense, which it will, right? They've brought in Bryce Underwood and Mikey Keene. They've got they got the wide receivers that they have right now. They're in contention for Skylar Bell. I've been told that there's another name out there that it doesn't sound like it's one that anybody knows that they're going to go after. I was also told with Skylar Bell, like he's well beyond what people think he is, and he's just kind of looked down on a little bit because he went to Wisconsin, then UConn. But he should be looked at as one of the elite receivers if Michigan's able to get him. So there's help on the way offensively. Chip Lindsey taking over at offense, bringing in Justice Haynes, which I'll talk about him a little bit on the other side here. But it's buy Michigan stock right now. Buy it. Like, go all in, because it's going to get really, really, really good, I think. JD Pickell, my friend and colleague over at On3, said this was the most gettable. This year was the most gettable Michigan's going to be under Sherrone Moore. Time will tell, but as long as they can keep as much of the band intact, then I think it's correct. So let's continue talking about everything as we wrap up the 2024 season for Michigan on a very high note. We're going to continue on here in just a moment. But before we do, attending the new 12-team college football playoff games is an incredible experience that brings fans together like never before. I remember the excitement of the past playoff games. Can't wait to make new memories with the updated format and extra teams involved. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I used Game Time Picks to find tickets for a bunch of upcoming games. You browse through the deals. It's a breeze. I found great values for all kinds of seats around the venues. The Super Deal in particular stood out as the best value for all of these events. I love that I could see the seat views before buying and that the app shows the total upfront cost with no surprise fees at checkout. Plus, the on-time ticket delivery and lowest price guarantee gave me complete peace of mind. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. I know there are some that are probably would say, "Oh, ye of little faith." right, with Michigan winning this game. I mean, if you thought looking at what Michigan was going to be bringing against Alabama, I know Alabama had some players that weren't playing, right? Obviously, one of them being number 22, Justice Haynes. My joke was like, man, if Alabama had like a Blake Corum type running back, like a really dynamic, shifty back, you know, if only they had one. I mean, you could say he's so good, you could double Corum's number, call him number 22. If they had a guy like that. My other joke, this to multiple coaches, but not Wink Martindale. I'm not going to lie. I was afraid to say it. I wanted to make this joke to him, but I was like, I said this to multiple coaches. They all laughed. I said, you know, you're celebrating everything, but ultimately we got to look at the score and say, you allowed Alabama to put up 13. You know, Ohio State only scored 10. It's just, one of the coaches said to me, they said, you know, sometimes you just have an off day. Oh, man, the jubilation after the game was incredible. Here's the thing that's amazing to me. Because you look at the Ohio State game and you say, all right, they were able to do it without the best two players, one on either side of the ball. Colston Loveland, the best offensive player, and you know, Will Johnson. I mean, he'd been out for much of the year. Listen to the names I'm about to tell you that did not play in this game. Kalel Mullings, Donovan Edwards, Makari Page, Miles Hinton, Colston Loveland, Tyler Morris, Will Johnson, Josiah Stewart, Mason Graham, and Kenneth Grant. That's 10 of the 12 starters. Or sorry, 22 starters. I don't know why I said 12. Tired, I guess. 10 out of the 22 starters not playing. You could add Andrew Gentry and Dom Judice and Tommy Noman, all guys who started at their positions. Michigan beat an Alabama team that people thought was a college football playoff team. If it hadn't been for losing to 6-6 Oklahoma, then they would have been. And yet Michigan came away with the victory. That is absolutely and beyond incredible that they were able to do it. And obviously it started with defense, but it's also timely offense. I mean, you can't help but marvel at what Jordan Marshall did. Let's look at the stats. I know he had 100 yards on the dot. I think it was 23 carries offhand. I can't remember. Yeah, 23 carries, 100 yards, 4.3 yards a carry. I think it could have been even more with some play calling that was a little bit more conducive, right? Because they were running into a brick wall over and over again. And sometimes it worked. And the other times it was like I really wanted to see some different things. And then the fact that Alex Orji was out there, I thought it was going to help the run game more than it did, but they didn't really. I mean, he carried the ball 4 times for 9 yards, right? Like I thought that they were going to use him more, but it seemed like they were just kind of like, let's just get out of here, right? Let's not. You know, we can lean on the defense and do enough offensively to make this work. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more aggression. I think that's the only thing in this game where I'm kind of like, okay, there was a few times where they were just way too conservative, and that includes early in the game when they went for the penultimate field goal of the game. Michigan was up what? It went up 13 or something like that, or 16 to nothing. When it went up to that point, I thought that they would have been best served to, because they had the ball on the 2.5 yard line essentially. I thought they would have been best served to try to get the touchdown there. And because at that point it's a 2-score game to a 2-score game. I understand it's a little bit different because then it's, you know, it's two touchdowns and 2-point conversions. I still would have liked to seen them go up 20 to nothing. Some squandered opportunities. They had a moment when it was when they got the ball at 16-7 with 4 minutes left in the first half, and then they were getting the ball back. I felt like they really needed to put together 2 drives where they could have put the foot on Alabama's throat to the point where they don't get the ball back, but it being 30-7, right? Like they don't see the ball again, and before they know it, the game is out of hand. But in a way, this is more satisfying. Like, it would have been nice to have that, but it was also more satisfying in some respects because despite all of that, like, it came down to a fourth quarter, 4th down stop on Jalen Milroe for the second straight game against Alabama, all within the same calendar year. So I think that made the game one of those ones that people are going to look at and say, man, this is absolutely just something I'm going to look back on. And it's the ReliaQuest Bowl, right? Like that's what makes it even more kind of insane is like, this is a game that people are going to always remember. It's not quite the same as maybe like the Citrus Bowl after the 2007 season, Lloyd Carr's final game where it was, going up against Urban Meyer's Florida and all of that. But certainly this was satisfying. And to get to 8-5, which is a record that you actually feel like, okay, right? Like 7-6 is, man, what a disaster. That's 2005 territory. I mean, it's obviously, it could be worse years. It could be, 2013 or something like that. But I think I think of my time in school, 2004, pretty good, right? Like, I mean, it could have been better, but pretty good. 2005, awful. 2006, amazing until it wasn't. And then 2007, extremely disappointing, but ends on a high note, right? And, I mean, but this year had things that those years didn't have. Yeah, they beat Michigan State every one of those years. They won one bowl game in those 4 years, right? Because they lost the Rose Bowl in 2004. They lost the Alamo Bowl in 2005. They lost the Rose Bowl in 2006. And then they ended up winning the Citrus Bowl in 2007. But they lost to Ohio State all 4 of those years. So 8-5 with a bowl game win against Alabama and an Ohio State win and a Michigan State win. It's almost perplexing that Michigan lost the some of the games that they lost. Like they were like, you look at what this team is, and in retrospect, you're like, yeah, they were going to lose to Texas. They were going to lose to Oregon. Those were 2 games that I had them losing to Oregon preseason. Texas, I thought that they would maybe win that one, but I said I think they're going to win 2 of the 3 big games, or two games out of the big games that they had on the schedule, and they at least won the Ohio State game. So 8-5 feels pretty dang good considering what the alternatives could have been given what this team was. I mean, Michigan passed for 75 yards in the game, 11 for 15 between Davis Warren and Alex Orji, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Then you could see some of the guys that were like getting involved, right? Like you could see like Frederick Moore. Finally, we get to see him getting some stuff. He has two rushes for 8 yards, led the team with 3 catches for 37 yards and a touchdown. And I mean, again, we're not blowing the doors off of the barn here, but at the same time, like these are encouraging things to see, knowing that the changes that are coming, knowing that you have a Bryce Underwood, knowing that you have a new offensive coordinator coming in, you're going to have a more dynamic running back. You're still looking to add some of those guys on the offensive line. They'll probably get 1 or 2 more guys there. And also just the fact that the offensive line, for the most part, held up against an Alabama front that's pretty good. They got 2 sacks on the game, and Michigan still managed to get over 100 yards rushing. You would have liked more, but still, it's an encouraging thing. I got a note on Justice Haynes. I'm going to bring that up here momentarily. And we'll close out the first show of the new year on a high note in the same way that Michigan football did the same. We're going to do that here in just a moment. But before we do, the NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up the W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. It's thrilling. Not only can you bet who will win the game, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score the touchdown, how many points each team will score, and so much more. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. It is absolutely wild decision-making on my end to decide to come back to Michigan as fast as possible. But I did. I'm looking outside and it's snowing. I'm like, I could have been I would have been in Orlando. The plan was to go to Orlando. And then I nixed it last second and switched my flight out of Tampa to fly out right after the game. So I'm looking at the snow falling out my window over here, and you can probably see it on camera behind me too. And it's like, this is what I chose. I'm absolutely dumb, but I also figure like I can take a trip in like February and get out of this once I'm a little more tired of it. But I wanted to get back, and it's a lot easier to produce a podcast at home. Like when I say a lot easier, I'm talking exponentially. It takes way more work on the road when I don't have my trusty iMac Pro and all of the assets that I have on this computer. So we're glad to do that. I know there's some people who are probably worried about Justice Haynes. I wanted to at least bring up that because of the conversation that I had. There are no concerns as far as, he has not announced that he's committed. He has not been announced as signed. It's administrative stuff, and it's not school administrative stuff. It's going to be worked out. It is being worked out. So have no fear. I do not. That he's going to end up being in the fold. What's more, I've been told he's like a high academic kid, graduated already. I think if I heard that right, which I don't know. I think he's a sophomore, right? So that doesn't make sense to me when I heard that, but we can double check this real quick because there I already have everything kind of up here, but all right, here we go. Yeah, he's a sophomore, so I don't know what that is. Did he redshirt? I don't think he redshirted. Yeah, 2 years. So, but nonetheless, high academic kid. I think I misunderstood. He's on pace to graduate in 3 years. Super high GPA. Like I was told, like perfect program fit. So that's exciting. But there's going to be more excitement with the transfer portal. There's certainly a lot going on. I know that Chris Ballas over at the Wolverine has been saying that he had heard the phones are ringing off the hook still. Right, there's playoff teams. They got 5 days after their run ends to hit the portal. I don't have any specific names. I will say that. I'm not going to pretend like I do, but I think like the excitement is going to continue, and you're just going to be looking at a much different team. What's more, one of the things that I was told is because you have to recruit your own team, and that's different than it used to be, right? Like, and there were a lot of guys that were like, I'm out. I'm hitting the portal, and then they get to practice and they see Bryce Underwood and they're like, I was joking, you guys, I'm sticking around, because they want to be a part of that. I was told that Bryce Underwood being on this team now, it was one of the best recruiting chips that Michigan had for its own team. That's how like amazing he is as a player. I'll tell you another thing that I thought was really impressive. Before the game, so like there were a bunch of the early enrollees. They're just in just the jerseys, right? Just on their own. They're not wearing pads or anything, of course. They can't play in this game. I'm sitting there just kind of like watching these guys like mess around. But they spent the time messing around actually like talking ball. Like I'm talking like Jamar Browder, Shamari Earls sitting there like quizzing each other. All right. This is the situation. How do you defend it? This is the situation. How do you get past the DB? Like that's they were just sitting there like talking ball in a way that was conducive to actually like mentally getting better and understanding the game. Unbelievable to hear that from guys who should still be in high school, and the fact that they're like already trying to make each other better. Like hearing this with my own ears, it's like, okay. This is a good situation Michigan's in, and then they get rewarded essentially by getting to see Michigan beat Alabama. Because if Michigan gets blown off the field against Alabama, there's certainly, no one's going anywhere. These guys are signed, but at the same time, it's one of those things where they could be like, what did I just do? Did I make the right choice? And could be sitting there having like a wandering eye. Not the case at all, man. They got to celebrate with the team. They got their champions hats. They're having a good time, watching, Sharon, family, everybody having a good time. This was like such a great springboard. I'm not always of the mindset that the bowl game is necessarily the springboard that people say it is. Sometimes I think a loss can motivate you just as well. I think that was a big part with 2020. It wasn't a bowl game. They didn't go to one. But I think that having the losses they had was great for the sake of it. It got the Aiden Hutchinson, Josh Ross, Mikey Sainristil, all of those guys say like, you know what, it's enough. We're done with this. But I think that this is a different thing because you've got so much talent coming in. There's a pride element to this where it's like we are Michigan and we need to be able to show everybody we're Michigan. I think that it changes the perception as well from a national perspective. Coming off of a national championship game win and all of that, you get the title, and then you have a kind of a down year, but you still beat Ohio State, you still beat Alabama. I think that at least keeps everybody's eyes on Michigan in a way that is like, okay, right? Like this is not, this was a down year, but this isn't a Rich Rod or Brady Hoke down year. Heck, this isn't even a Jim Harbaugh down year. And there was a little concern for me watching the game against Alabama because as Michigan certainly could have gone up 19-0, that was, I think, what the score was against South Carolina going into halftime before South Carolina won the game. So, that ended on a whimper. And Michigan didn't let go. They didn't, say, all right, it's all done. It's all good. Even with the way the game almost ended, right, like with the idea of Michigan, not really doing, that much with the final drive, and then Alabama getting the ball with a chance to go down and win the game. It kind of reminded me of 2005 against or I should say 2004, but the Rose Bowl against Texas, or even the 2005 Ohio State game, where it kind of felt like Lloyd's all right, we basically won the game except for the final drive. Let's go. So I think that these are all very encouraging things, and it's amazing to come off of the win or come off the game with a win like that. Because now you as fans also have a reason to hold your head held up high. It's absolutely wonderful. All right, we will be back. Today's Wednesday, right? We'll be back tomorrow. Continue to get our shows in. Anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We will talk to you again very, very soon. Peace.